Good evening, everyone. I call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Elgin City Council on this first day of June 2021 at 6:30 p.m. We're going to start with roll call. Councilmember Callahan, we'll start with you, please.
Present.
Ibis here.
Frazier here.
Ramirez here?
Vega here.
Gibson here.
Maldonado here.
Okay, let the record show we have a quorum. Let the record show that Councilmember Dennis is not present. We're going to go to the invocation. Councilmember Vega?
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we ask you to watch over us this evening as we continue to conduct business for the city of Elgin. Guide us in a direction of progress and in a spirit of cooperation to balance the needs of the city as well as to produce successful outcomes beneficial to the citizens of Elgin. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. All right, guys, if we'll go to Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Normally, we would go to the public hearing, which is next on the agenda, but that's not going, we're not going to do the public hearing on those two items until after 7 p.m. So we'll skip down to public comments. Public individuals may request to speak on items on the agenda and items not on the agenda by requesting to speak during the meeting under public comment. Will be required to fill out public comment form presented with any material, handouts, or information to the council to the city secretary. Speaker comments are limited to 3 minutes. No formal action can be taken by the city council on items not posted on the agenda. Items requiring a public hearing will allow a member of the public an opportunity to speak during the public hearing and does not require submission of a public comment. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to an individual council member or member of staff. All speakers must limit their comments to the specific subject matter noted on the public comment form and refrain from personal attacks or derogatory comments directed at any council member, member of staff, other individual, or group. Okay, so it looks like we have 2 public comments. We'll start with Deborah Trevino. Yes, if you'll come up here. Ms. Trevino, if you just state your name and your place of, you don't have to give your address, but just say Elgin if you live in Elgin.
I live in Elgin.
Okay,
Deborah Trevino.
okay.
I was noticing paperwork that was handed over. I mean, all of your quotes, spending, it's not adding up. Why are we not being real open and public about the spending, the real spending, where is it really going? Because it's not showing up on your paperwork from 2019 all the way up until now, but yet we still get run around when asked. So is there a specific answer to why we're not getting actual answers to these? Or do we have to keep doing our own investigations and finding more stuff out?
Are you expecting me to answer? No, oh, okay, because we can't address any of your comments.
I mean, I was just curious of why is this going on? I mean, if it's been going on since 2019, it hasn't been fixed. We need to find out where the source, who's the source, where is the money being pocketed? I'm not claiming y'all are, but I'm just saying. We need to find out and get down to that. My investigation also concludes
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Okay, next we have Stephanie Lipke. Ms. Lipke, if you would just state your name and your city of residence.
It's not gonna cooperate, but, all right, Stephanie Lipke, Elgin, Texas. Okay, consider this a formal complaint to the city council, and it's our final formal complaint. At concern are continuing issues coupled with new red flags. To this date, the city manager has failed to comply with several public information requests. The Texas Attorney General ruled that the city must release former Chief Patrick South's location services, and they have failed to do so at this time and by law. 4 requesters were denied this information and has not been released to this date. Also of concern are the severely erroneous quarterly financial statements. Your revised first and second quarter 2021 quarterly investment reports in your packet are just added figures added back to make the final numbers add up right. You have to go back further. The fourth quarter 2019 financials don't match the first quarter 2020 financials. And this is where it goes off the rails. This has been happening for years, unnoticed and unchecked. The report is riddled with date typos as well. Millions of dollars missing, and not one of you even noticed. Where is the fourth quarter 2020 financial reports? It was never presented to the council as required by law. These are violations of the Public Funds Investment Act, and Brooks and Watson missed all of this in their audits, which calls into question the veracity of their audits. This isn't a few dollars. This is millions of dollars not accounted for. I'm not saying that that's in someone's pocket. I'm saying these are poor financial reports that need to be fixed. The fact that no one was concerned about this at the last meeting, except for Mayor Ramirez asking questions, is very concerning. Furthermore, we are requesting an external independent investigation into the city manager, Tom Mattis's actions for mismanagement and failure to maintain accurate financial records, failure to comply with orders to release public information by Texas law and the Texas Attorney General, and overall mismanagement and actions on becoming a city manager. If we've learned anything in this long process, is we learned about the power of petition. And when placed in the voters' hands, voters can also petition the recall of Elgin City Council members who refuse to take action. We have been presenting serious issues for over a year to no avail. The only option left to the voters when the city council refuses to acknowledge the problems at hand, and worse, having had knowledge of these problems, continues to condone them, is to recall those city council members who refuse to do the job that they were elected to do. It takes only 200 voters signing to a recall petition. This is a very small percentage of the voteelgin.com has already made contact with and are needed to recall these city council members. This is the last time we ask you to do the right thing. Immediately vote to start an external investigation and a forensic audit to look into the city manager's failure to comply with the law and the financial irregularities, which you are all aware of now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lipke. Okay. Let the record show that Councilmember Dennis arrived at 6:38 p.m.
My apologies, Mayor.
No problem. Next on the agenda is presentation for the winter storm appreciation letters. And this is something that I'm very proud of. The city of Elgin wanted some opportunity to thank all the citizens that helped during the winter freeze. And so we asked in various different social medias for nominees. And we received quite a few. And Amy, would you bring me up just one of those plaques, please? So through the nominations that our citizens have sent in, we have the certificate of recognition that we're going to give numerous members of the community. It says certificate of recognition probably awarded to, in this case, Donna Snowden, Bastrop County Commissioner, Precinct 4, Outstanding Community Service, Extreme Winter Storm 2021, and signed by myself. And we have about 30 of these. So I'm gonna read the names real quick of the nominees, the names that we received for nominees. And then what I'm gonna ask the city council to do is, as they listen to these names, and I'm talking about after the meeting, not right now, after the meeting, if you know some of these people, I want you to take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these and present it to those people and get a picture of yourself presenting it so that we can post it on the city website. And I think as we read these names, some of them will be familiar to you. So I'm gonna read who we have during the extreme winter storm of February 2021. Michael Gonzalez, Dodi Navejas, Amy Miller, Elizabeth Morgan, Tom Mattis, I'm sorry, this is okay. Guillermo Niavas, Donna Snowden, David Glass, Sue Beckwith, Molly Alexander and Gary, Roland Nava, John Smith, Veronica and Brad Seaver, Stephanie, Tiffany, and Declan Finley, Aaron and Zach Tatro, Charlotte Swinson, Lisa Hillstead, Tim Swinson, and Danny Gear. So if you know any of these after the meeting, before you leave, they're all back there in the back, and I'd like you to take 2 or 3 apiece if you know them, and make sure that they get the honor, the prestige of receiving this, and then get a picture so we can post it on the city website. Yes, Councilmember Kelly.
Monica Nava should definitely be included in that list.
I think, did I not read her name? Because she's here.
I did not hear her name.
Okay, I'm sorry, Monica Nava, absolutely, and she has one back there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Monica Nava was the second one, should have been the second one I read, I'm sorry if I looked it over. So is there any questions on what we're gonna do and how much we appreciate? These are people that stepped up beyond what they needed to help the city and to help the citizens. So this is just our way of saying thank you. Okay. Well, we had an ad in the paper last week, Amy, thanking everyone that did receive a nomination, and we're gonna do another one, is that correct?
We're gonna do another one, just last week.
Okay, well, we had one last week, so that's good. Okay. All right, moving on. We're moving on to the city manager's report. Tom, if you'll take the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on our agenda is Charles has a presentation on revised quarterly investment reports that the mayor had asked for at our last meeting. And he's left something at your place that he's gonna walk through with you.
Mayor and Council, I think before we get into the details of the quarterly report, I think it's instructive to kind of look back at the history and see where the requirements under the Public Funds Investment Act came from. And you have to go back to before 1994, there wasn't any requirement that a quarterly investment report be produced. And then in Orange County, there was a gentleman that was responsible for the finances there, started investing in derivatives and which are secondary securities, and invested money that was borrowed and ended up costing Orange County several $1 billion. You can look on the internet, go Orange County bankruptcy, and it'll detail exactly what happened. This was in December of 1994. By September 1st of 1995, the state of Texas published passed the Public Funds Investment Act, and that's where it came from. Now, under that act, it specifies exactly what cities, cities, schools, any public entities that have funds can invest in, and the range of investments are considerable, not derivatives, they don't allow that anymore, invest in commercial paper, mortgage-backed securities, bankers acceptance, the pools, investment pools, and it's required that we produce a investment policy and strategy every year. And this is done in conjunction right after the budget. I've done that every year. And what the requirements, you can put in there what the council, what you allow us to invest in. And since the Public Funds Investment Act is really for the larger cities who have more sophisticated investment opportunities. For smaller cities, it's really limited to pools and to whatever public funds you have in operating deposits at banks. So that's all that in the investment policy that you approved is just basically the interest that we earn in deposits and CDs and the certificates of deposit in the pools. So, like I say, the Public Fund Investment Act is for larger cities. It really, while it applies to smaller cities, there's some cities that are really small where they don't even pay attention to this because there's no really retribution. There's no enforcement from a legal standpoint. It's simply if you set the policy, the staff should follow that policy and invest in things that need to be invested in or allowed to be invested in. So it's not, the quarterly investment report is generated by simply the deposits and the withdrawals in the bank account that we have for the operating accounts and in the money that we have in the investment pools. And the way it was done here, I wasn't here when that was set up, but what we do is in the investment pools, we have an account for each of the certificates of deposit. Okay. And then as projects are done, we draw that money out and put it into and pay the vendors or the contractors as those projects are executed. I have the summary of the last 4 reports. I handed out the revised versions of each one of those reports. I've kind of summarized them here. And what you want to see is that the beginning balances in 1 year are the beginning balances in one quarter is the beginning balances of the next quarter. As you can see, all of these roll over from the original beginning two people working on this. One of them in utility billing, and then the financial analyst. And unfortunately, during that time period where the error occurred, I had terminated the person that had been doing that. And so when that spreadsheet was, when that tab was tabbed over, they picked up the right ones for this, because Jody on utility billing did this part of it, which is correct. But this part, the beginning and ending, were automatically rolled over to the next quarter, and it wasn't adjusted. And it's my fault, and I apologize for that. But we did get it corrected, and these are the correct amounts. Okay. These are a little easier to, I handed out the full reports on each one of those, but this is kind of a summary of each one. But
Charles, when you say it wasn't adjusted, what do you mean by that? When you say it wasn't adjusted properly? Did they draw numbers from the wrong tab, an
No,
old tab?
They didn't update the numbers, because there wasn't anybody here to do it. The person that did it was gone. When I got it, I must have been on my credit union that day, and I just didn't look at it, so, it didn't get updated. And now these are the updated figures based on what the bank, deposits and withdrawals show.
So all of those figures are backed up by financial statements that we have?
Yes.
Okay.
By the bank records and
Yes.
the investment pool records. And we can verify that. I mean, if somebody wanted to see the individual daily deposits of every one, we could go, because I do it on a monthly basis. Keep in mind that this report is generated separately from our general ledger. On the general ledger, deposits, daily deposits are posted the next day in the general ledger. And withdrawals, when we write checks, those are posted the next day when those checks are issued. On this one, we go to the end of the month and just do a summary of each one of those. So the books, the general ledger, is up to date. It's all done as it happens. This is a summary that's done at the end of the month. And then at the end of 3 months, we do the quarterly report. Now, in addition to having to do this on an Excel spreadsheet, we're in the middle of a transition from our accounting software from STW to Encode. And when I got here, Encode, we were using STW, which is totally inadequate for a city this size and growing the way we're growing. So we, in the 2019 bonds, we put money in there to pay for the conversion to Encode, but we're having to do it. Again, this is one thing that was assigned to the initial financial analyst who was terminated. We have a new one, and she's super terrific. She's really a godsend, because she was the one that figured out that there was an error in this quarterly report. But it was too late to fix it by the time we took it to council. Okay. So I do, there was open record request recently about this difference between where the money came from for the beginning of $2,386,000, $4,457,000. That was a payment from the EDC that they owed from having drawn down part of the 2016 bond funds. So that's 4,000 of it. All right. Now, going back to 2016 issue, we had, the purpose was improving renovation This is what we're authorized to spend money on. If you'll recall, in the 2021 bond, we had this wastewater lines lift station at FM 1704 at $1,750,000. If you remember that one, when we were talking about that one. Okay, the reason we had to do that, in December 2015, the city completed annexation, and that was why we had to do the expansion of the wastewater system and the lift station. All right? But in 5 years, the city required to provide services to the meeting area that was originally annexed in 2015. 5 years, 2020. So we had to start that project, and that project was started with 2016 COs, which was authorized in the original issue. Go on to the next one. Here's the resolution, it was 2020-1840, that authorized the contracting for that M1704 project. You can look it up. So that was started, and we were using 2016 bond funds. Again, we put the money reserved it in 2021 bond. But to date, we spent $1,398,000 on that project out of 2016 bonds that needs to be reintegrated. Go on to the next one. In addition to that, we have this water treatment plant, which originally was supposed to be out of the 2016 COs at $1,000,004. It's gone beyond that. It still hadn't completed yet. So we've been using 2016 bond funds, but we hadn't gotten reimbursed the full amount for from the grant funds from FEMA. Okay. Go on. So we had a balance as of May 31st, $4,457,000. We get reimbursed from the COs 2021, $1,398,412. Plus, we have about $100,000 in additional utility fund responsibilities for that booster pump station because it ran over, which once this is repaid, we'll have close to the $6 million that I had estimated we would need out of the 2016 bond for that project for the wastewater treatment plant. Okay.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying. And I wasn't here in 2016, so I don't know, the total reason. I know we annexed some land that we didn't have before. Was that for Trinity Ranch? Does anybody know?
No, it's
It
all
wasn't.
1704.
Oh, okay, off 1704. Trinity Ranch is not gonna back up onto 1704?
We designed that project, and it's another project that we actually upsized the wet well a little bit, so that Trinity Ranch or other development out there, obviously we didn't build it just to serve the existing homes out there. So it's possible that Trinity Ranch could access that wet well at some point and use that lift station. But the whole project was, as Charles explained, had exclusively to do with the fact that we annexed that property, and the council made the conscious decision that when you annex property, you have to extend all city
Right.
services within 5 years. And so it's another issue. We waited till the very end to avoid the cost, but that project is, as Charles said, is being built now, and we're close to completion, actually, of that project.
It's been a very costly project. Okay.
Well, I'll just say, council knew it was that cost when they made that decision to go ahead with it, so.
Yeah, when we presented this to the council to get approval to go forward with the contract, we had to do, because TCEQ requires in 5 years, you gotta get started on this thing. We knew since the specifically had that project in it, but because of the language had allowed that project to be done, we used 2016 funds with the intent that later, when we came back with the 2021 bond, that we would reimburse the 2016. So now we'll have the 6 million, close to the 6 million for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. There's no money missing. There's no money in my pocket.
Mayor, if you remember, this is, we talked about the reimbursement resolution we passed early on, and that's exactly why we do that, is so that we can proceed with projects, knowing that we're gonna have the money in the future.
And I understand that, and let's clear something up too. When we say that we're paying cost, reimbursing some cost, let's say for engineering, there's different kinds of engineering, is that correct? There's design engineering, construction engineering, inspection engineering. So when we say that we paid, let's say $500,000 to TRC for engineering, that doesn't mean that we're necessarily done with engineering costs. It means that we paid maybe the design engineering, or we paid maybe the construction, whatever the case happens to be.
You're right.
So just so that we
Exactly
all
right.
understand, when we say, well, we paid this engineering cost in 2016, why are we paying it again in 2020? It's not the same engineering cost.
Yeah, obviously you have to have plans and specs before you start the project, so engineering costs are always up front, are always in the beginning before you get into the actual project.
You know, there's another thing that this is gonna happen in the future when we do get the proceeds for the 2021 bonds, is there's $5 million in there for the Piscataway Hill Water Reservoir. Fortunately, through a lot of my staff's effort, we got that, we got a grant for 99% of that. We only have to put 1% up. But that 1% isn't all that we put up. In order to get the grant, they don't give you a check for $5 million. Say, here, go build it, and you've got the money in hand. What you have to do is you gotta spend it first, okay? Then you get reimbursed. So if the payments in one quarter investment report is lower, that doesn't mean that we're not gonna get the money in the next quarter to reimburse us for that advance that we made. That's the way it works. And there's nothing we can do about it. And sometimes it's 30 to 60 days before we get reimbursed, and sometimes they disallow expenses. It's not a question of, here's a check for $5 million, or here's a check for $10 million for the County Line Road and flood control project. That's what's particularly worrisome about going forward, is that I had $3 million in there for the County Line Road, which there's 3 projects there that each are gonna cost about $5 million. And I put $3 million for that cash flow up front that could be laid over in the next bond issues. Now that we don't have that, it's gonna be really hard to even fund the money for the $10 million improvements in the flood control County Line Road. I don't know where you're gonna get that money.
Okay, so I want to clear something up there as well. And council, we all know this that have been dealing with this for a while. The county line widening and improvement plan, as Charles mentioned, is 3 segments, 3 phases. Phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 was what we were borrowing money for, what we wanted to borrow money for in the 2021 obligation bonds. Phase 1. Phase 1 is basically the subdivisions, Eagles Landing and Homestead and Harvest Ridge, from there to the high school, roughly. That's phase 1.
City limits.
To the city limits, okay. Roughly, that's phase 1. The grant, the $10.9 million grant that we received that we found out that we received last week or the week before, I can't remember now, that was not for phase 1. That money cannot be spent on phase 1. That money was for flood mitigation on Kennedy and Brenham and on County Line Road. but it was for Phase 2. Phase 2 is from Highway 290, basically to Nidec Elementary, because that's the part of county line that floods. So when we say we have $10.9 million, it's not $10.9 million that we can just go willy-nilly spend on county line, because it doesn't work that way. That grant, which we never know if we're gonna get a grant, I think we're at about 40% successful on grants or something similar. When we put in for a grant, that doesn't mean we're gonna get it. This particular grant had 82 applicants make the final package, and out of that, they picked 30-something cities. And we were lucky enough in Bastrop County to have Bastrop, Smithville, and Elgin all chosen to receive money from that grant. And as Charles saying, we're not gonna get a $10 million check. It doesn't work that way. We will eventually get paid back for spending not $10 million on County Line Road, $10 million on Kennedy and County Line Road. Those are the two major projects that we applied for in the grant and that we got approved for. So Phase 1 that we applied for in our COs, that's not gonna happen, not gonna happen for a while. Phase 2, which is 290 to Nidec Elementary, eventually we are gonna start that one. And thank the Lord that instead of the city having to pay the $5 million, we're gonna get help from this grant, a lot of help, hopefully. But it's to fix the flooding issues. Now, during fixing the flooding issues, we're also gonna be able to improve and widen County Line Road, that Phase 2 section. Phase 3 is a section in the middle, and we're hoping to get, that's where the turn is, where the light is and all that area. We're hoping that's Phase 3 for a reason. That's because TxDOT, we're hoping, is gonna help us out with that, instead of the city carrying the entire burden. So it was a plan. Phase 1, get that part done. Phase 2, which this grant application now is gonna help with, it hadn't been approved yet. So we couldn't count on that money yet, not until we got the grant application approved. Phase 2, now we have some engineering, but now we're gonna have to do more engineering to get the rest of it ready. So it may be 2023 we were looking at before we actually start doing any work out there. And that's on the section from 290 to Nidec Elementary. Okay, I'm sorry, Charles, go ahead. Yes, Thomas.
I was gonna say, I just have some questions, because County Line Road is, my ward and.
If I could, we're gonna get into County Line Road and the 5-year capital plan, and you have an agenda item later to talk
Okay,
about that.
because I've got some financial questions regarding that. I don't know if it's better to bring them up now or.
I think we need to wrap up the report on the quarterly investment report, and then we'll have plenty of opportunity to talk
I
about
went
this.
off the point that Charles was making, that grant money is not given to you in one big, large sum. That's where I went off on that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
Well, I would just say that basically, the quarterly investment report is tantamount to our personal checking accounts, right? If you take a snapshot at any given time, it's not going to reflect all the bills you owe. It's not going to reflect all the money you've got coming in. But as Charles said, we're compelled to do that. So it's not a true financial report in the sense that you won't ever see this in the audit or the budget or anything like that. So that's where it can get confusing. It's just a snapshot for the council to know where our cash is at any quarterly report. And I'd just say, as Charles said, we had a problem. A mistake was made in the report that was pointed out at the last meeting. We acknowledged then it was a mistake. We're acknowledging now it's a mistake. It was simply a transposition error, a human error on somebody's part. But as Charles said, these reports are accurate now, and they're backed up by all financial records. So we've got an opportunity to get into County Line Road in detail here later in the agenda. But Mayor, I'd prefer we stick to this report, questions about this report now if we have them.
The information that you're giving us is basically, you're saying that the city, as far as this quarterly investment report, the city's statistics and money is there. It's not missing. It's not misappropriated. It's easy and
There's
fairly
no missing
easily.
funds, is what I tried to explain, that it's cash flow. And we'll be getting the $1.3 million, which was approved by council. There wasn't anything illegal about it. There wasn't anything nefarious about it. The council approve that project. They did it ahead of time. But the 2016 bonds need to be replenished from the 2021 bonds, which clearly we put $1,750,000 in there, and part of that was to reimburse whatever expenses we had out of 2016 bond.
Okay.
The question was raised, where's the $6 million that we were counting on to use from the prior bond issues to fund the $16 million wastewater treatment plant expansion? Because it looked like, based on that report, we were down $2 million in this line item. And as you've shown right here, we're covering that money, so we'll have the $6 million, and the 16 bond funds will be replenished to the point where we'll have those funds available when we have to pay that bill.
Council, do you have any questions of Charles right now? You saw what he handed out, the 4 quarters.
I would like to also add that if anybody ever has any question, I'm in my office 7 days a week. You can come by anytime, just let me know, and I'll explain anything you need to know as in much detail as you want to have the information. That's why at the end of those things, at the end of each one of those
Executive summary.
executive summaries, we say that. If you have any questions about that, you can come see us. I'm here every day. And that applies to anybody, any citizen that wants to come in. I'd be happy to explain it to them.
The FEMA funds, so the reimbursement of that, is it being given to the city in payments, or are we just expecting a lump sum at some time, at some point? Because I know the process is pretty slow with FEMA. Or the grant, the FEMA funds that you were talking about?
Yeah, what we do is, once you expend the money, then you apply for the grant funds for the amount that you spent. If you spent $200,000 on a contractor, you have to submit that as a draw against the grant, and that takes anywhere from 30 to 60 days before they process it and make sure that there's no disallowance or there's adequate backup for all the expenses. And as far as I know, we've never really been disallowed any expenses, so we must be doing something right when we apply for those funds.
One last question that I have. Have we been audited for the fiscal year 2020?
For this fiscal year, or the prior fiscal year, that audit's just about finished. Misty is looking it over now, make sure we agree with, what their statements are. We should be presenting it to council within a month, and that will have a complete, the annual audit for the 2020,
Okay.
which a lot of this was involved in. Now, what they'll do is, if you miss a quarterly report, they'll just put that in the finding and say, don't do it again. There's no consequences. I mean, it's nothing. If there's any adjustments that need to be made, they'll do audit adjustments, and those will come, and we put those in so that our beginning balances for the next fiscal year are properly done. But that audit report will be done in about a month.
Okay, so we should get findings in a few weeks then.
We'll get the audit report. I think maybe we should explain that too. That obviously, as the council knows, the city does an annual audit every year, and this council received that audit report just a few months ago for the 18-19 year. This audit report you'll receive that Charles is talking about here in a month will be for the 19-20 year, and then by the end of this calendar year, the auditor will begin their work on auditing the 2021 books when the fiscal year closes. So we have an audit every year. Our last audit, we received the best outcome that you could from an audit, and that we received an unqualified opinion. So there just isn't any question that the money is there. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is an individual making a transposition error on a report, and we've explained that difference. But you'll get all the independent audit reports. Those are on our website as well, I think, that they're available for people to review.
Council, do we have any more questions or comments for Charles while he's up there?
The main question I have is, why are we using an Excel spreadsheet?
Because we haven't gotten that module in code, I asked Misty to look into that, see if we have that module where it automatically will produce it. Keep in mind that STW wouldn't have it. They didn't have a lot of the features that Encode has, but this is a process that's been going on for about a year and a half now. We had some problems with the vendor at the beginning. They delayed 6 months before they ever started doing it. The person I had assigned to doing the project leader for the conversion has since left. So we basically had to start over. So it's been one issue after another. I would like to point out that, and I put this in my memo to the mayor when I responded, that I only have 3 people out of 9 that started when I started. You know what kind of turnover that does, what that does to you in terms of trying to keep up with things ongoing, plus the conversion at the same time, plus COVID. Do you have any idea?
I'm gonna guess no.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, there's, that's why I was just wondering, is the new program gonna be able to generate?
It's just like, they used to have ADP do the payroll, now Encode's gonna do payroll, and we're gonna save like $22,000 a year because we're doing it in-house instead of through ADP. So all these modules that are coming on, the investment report was kind of the last one. Like I said, the investment report, that requirement is for much larger cities. A lot of smaller cities don't even pay a lot of attention to it. What it does is give you a snapshot of the beginning of the quarter, the end of the quarter, how much interest you earn. When you're earning like 1% or 2% on deposits, or even in the pools, which is like 1.7%, the consequence of it is pretty negligible. That doesn't mean that it's not important and we shouldn't use the same diligence that we have with the other thing to make sure it's correct. But just as I indicated to you, when I came here, this wasn't everything being done correctly all the time by everybody.
Okay, all right, we understand. We understand what you're saying. Is
Well,
there,
Mayor, I'd like, just one quick point. We use a lot of Excel spreadsheets. A lot of the reports we give to council are Excel spreadsheets. We use
Right.
those all the time.
Right, but,
Okay,
I'm
we're
just thinking for,
You ask why we were
this-
using them, I'm telling you, we use them all the time.
okay, but let's go to the point where you came up here to give us our quarterly investment report. You've done so. We know that there was an error. We know that we corrected it. We have an audit that's going to be presented to us in a matter of a few weeks, audit findings that are going to be presented to us in a matter of a few weeks. So are we good with that?
Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment. As a member of council that was around here in 2016, I understand everything you described, Charles. I mean, I also understand the complexities and at the very least, we have an awareness of where we need to improve. I think there are measures in place. I think for those that were on council way back when, I accept the reconciliation explanation as well as understanding the discrepancies. I don't feel like I've been shortchanged at all as a council. I have to believe that we all work together to not only understand the information that's presented to us, and it is up to us to ask the questions, and I feel like we did that long ago. For the newer ones here, I think it's all great information. At the same time, I think we need to understand that moving ahead, I don't feel like we're being shortchanged at all. And then I feel like I have been presented accurate information to the best of everyone's knowledge, so I wanted to perhaps leave it there and hopefully feel like, Mayor, you support that as well, moving ahead. Otherwise, we're not gonna be on the same page, and I don't know if we're gonna get anywhere as we move into budget.
And that's a very important point. Thank you, Councilmember Vega. And what I don't want to do is overwhelm the council members that haven't had an opportunity to work with this as much. So let's, are we ready to move on? Thank you, Charles. Before we go any further, I want to go back on the agenda to public hearing. It's after 7 p.m. The first public hearing we have is public hearing on an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Elgin, Texas, adopted in chapter 46, section 46-3, revised code of ordinances, city of Elgin, Texas, 2013, and making this amendment a part of said official zoning map, to wit, to rezone as R3 single family, two family, and industrialized housing district, the property being approximately 0.48 acres of land and being described in Exhibit A, attached hereto, and providing a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. This is a public hearing. Do we have anybody here to speak on that? If you would just state your name, please.
My name is Rocha.
Okay.
And
You have 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
basically, this property has been in my family for a long time. My grandpa bought it. It went down to my dad, who the house he had built right now on there in 1968. He had built. Then it went to my uncle, and then now it's down to me. Well, I'm a single mother of 4 kids, and all I wanted to do was make the house maybe a little bigger for me and my kids, because the house is kind of small, and just basically keep the property in our family. But I was told I couldn't do that because of zoning issues, because the property is zoned commercial, and basically, therefore, they told me I couldn't do anything with it.
When you say they, you're talking about, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead and finish your statement. I'm sorry.
Basically, they told me that I couldn't do anything like make it a little bigger or, make the house a little bigger and nicer for me and my kids, because it is zoned commercial. They said in order for me to do that, it'd have to go back to residential.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I'm a single mother of 4 kids, and that's basically all I was trying to do, but due to zoning issues, I can't do anything right now for me and my kids. And basically, that's all I was wanting to do. And basically, like I said, it's been in my family for a long time. And basically, that's what we're trying to do, is keep it in the family. But like I said, we can't do anything with it. And it's always been used as a residence. It's never been used for commercial use. But like I said, we're just trying to keep it in the family and just keep it within family members. But like I said, I can't make the house nicer and bigger for me and my kids due to zoning issues.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone?
Mayor, I can give a little background
Yeah,
story
sure,
on it real
absolutely.
quick. This is, as the owner said there, this is actually, it's kind of an unusual request, because typically people will, it's what's often referred to as down zoning, because obviously commercial zoning is typically a little more valuable than residential zoning, is particularly this piece that fronts on 290, but it's a request by the property owner, as she described, to use this property for residential purposes, and under the city's zoning code, you can't build a house in a commercially zoned area. You kind of get the bearings off this map. It's kind of right next door to that smoke shop, right, out there on 290. So that's the request.
It just sits a little further back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it goes more to the back than it does to the front.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? On this item right here. Is there anyone here to speak for the public hearing on this item we just read? Okay, let's move on to the second public hearing. Public hearing on a specific use permit for the continuation and enlargement of a child care center at property located at 1512 and 1520 North Avenue C, or FM 1100 as is known.
I can give a quick brief on that, Mayor. This is actually a renewal of a special use permit for an existing daycare center there on Avenue C or FM 1100. I assume you can get your bearings from this. That had been approved by the Planning Commission and the Council 5 years ago, but at that time, they had placed a 5-year limit on that special use permit, so that's why the owners are back asking for it to be renewed.
Plus an addition, is that right?
That's right.
Is there anyone here to speak on that item? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Jackie Mabry, and that's my property. Actually, I opened in 2004, and they only gave 5-year permits for specific use. But the thing of it is, I own the property next door, and each lot is a little over an acre, and if I want to enlarge, I figured I'd go ahead and do the specific use permit for both of them at the same time. And Mr. Harrell said he had no objections to that, but he didn't think I should enlarge. And I thought, well, that was an affront to me that I can't increase my business. Somebody has to come in here. There's too many houses going up and too many people moving into Elgin that we really need more daycare and child care centers. So I figured it needed to go bigger. So I was just trying to include the both properties to have enough land to do that if that's what I choose to do.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it.
Is there anyone else here to speak on public hearing number 2 that we just discussed? Okay, we can. That was the public hearing portion of those 2 items. Let's go ahead and we're going to move in the agenda. We're going to go to new business. And we're going to act on the 2 items that were just discussed. Item number 2 under new business. It says an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Elgin, Texas, adopted in chapter 46, section 46.3, revised code of ordinances, city of Elgin, Texas, 2013, and making this amendment a part of said official zoning map, to wit, to rezone an R3 single-family dwelling district, the property being approximately 0.480 acres of land and being described in Exhibit A, attached hereto, and providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. And so, council, here's where we're going to look at this and decide, or I'll entertain a motion after we discuss it to whether approve or disapprove this ordinance.
Mayor, I have one item to add. The Planning Commission obviously reviewed both of these requests, and this particular request, they, along with the staff recommendation, was to approve as requested.
Okay, so the zoning, planning and zoning doesn't have a problem with it, basically.
It was unanimous.
It was what?
Unanimous.
Okay. Is there any discussion or any questions or comments that the council may have? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
As presented, so moved.
As presented, yes.
Second?
Okay, motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Vega to approve ordinance number, new business item number 2 as read. I'll take a vote, starting with Mayor Pro Tem Brasher.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Vega, yes?
Gibson, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Okay, motion passes successfully. Congratulations. Okay, let's go to item number 3 under new business.
Have a happy house.
Congratulations. Item number 3 under new business, an ordinance granting a specific use permit for the continuation and enlargement of a child care center at a property located at 1512 and 1520 North Avenue C, Elgin West Countryside, Lot 10 acres, 1.105, and Lot 11 acres, 1.076, City of Elgin, Bastrop County, Texas, being more described in Exhibit A, and providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, as discussed earlier, is for the renewal of a special use permit for a child daycare center. As the applicant mentioned, the staff did, and is in the council report, express a concern about traffic volumes in this area. As you know, this is a residential area not designed to handle a lot of traffic, and the continuing expansion of a daycare center there might create some problems for traffic, and that was expressed to the Planning Commission. So their compromise was to approve the permit as requested, to extend the permit to include the next door property, but that basically the permit would be limited to essentially the existing structures. That the way to keep, hopefully keep traffic down was not to allow those structures to be expanded beyond their current size. And then, of course, to include the 5-year limit on the approval, and the applicant will have to come back in 5 years to get it renewed. So with those stipulations, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the request.
Council, do we have any questions or comments on this?
Is there any way we can modify this? We can't, there's no way we can go around this to give her all the space she wants?
In what way, Councilmember Kelly?
Give her both of her spots that
Yes,
she's
I mean, well, you can certainly talk about it, and we'll see if the council supports it.
That would be another resolution?
No, it would be, the council wants to discuss this and see if the planning and zoning is saying, let's give 1512 5 more years, as it has been. But the 1520, they have a problem with because of, mostly because of traffic, the extra traffic in case of the expansion. I personally feel like we're gonna have a whole lot of traffic out there anyway.
What time does this daycare get out? Do we know? 6 o'clock.
Well, just to be clear, they can expand to the next door property and use that property. They just can't build bigger buildings than are there.
Is there an existing structure on that property?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. There's an existing footprint of a structure on that on that property.
It just has a lot of issues.
Yeah. Just to be clear, typically, to overrule the Planning Commission requires a supermajority of the council to vote for that,
How would we
under
go
the
about-
local government code.
How do we go about creating a supermajority? What would that entail?
Make a motion and vote on it.
Make a motion.
In other words, it wouldn't have to be just a 5 to 4. It would have to be a bigger majority than just 5 to 4. But before we make a motion, I want to see if there's any more discussion that anybody wants to have or questions.
So what are you gonna use that other lot for?
I was just hoping to build a bigger building, a new building. And they told me if I did that, I would have to take the line out of the middle to make it one property instead of 2. Because I have to have so much parking, depending on the size of the child care center. It was something that he discussed last year when I first started talking.
Well, just to be clear, those are requirements. You can't waive those requirements. That,
And I have
The-
no
the-
objection to that, I would just, wanting to do something bigger. Expand a little bit, 2 separate buildings doesn't appeal to me.
the issue before council is to consider this request for a special use permit as reflected in the ordinance, and to consider the recommendation of the Planning Commission. That's what's required under our code. They've made that recommendation. If the council wants to do something different than this recommendation, you just have to say that in the motion.
Yeah,
Before we make a motion, let's make sure we're through with discussion. So, any comments, discussion, go ahead.
Yeah,
Thomas.
I'm just thinking, the city's gonna need daycare somewhere. It's gonna create traffic somewhere. I'm thinking over there by the schools, it's.
Talk about convenience.
I think it's one of the better places to have that
So to be clear, if I understand what the resident is requesting, that she said that in their discussion with planning and zoning, that there was an option to combine the two lots into one rather than having two lots with similar zoning, is that correct? But one is restricted, or they're both restricted to whatever footprint is there, but if it was combined, could there be another larger building put on that, or, and is that something that if we wanted to recommend that, would we send that back to planning and zoning for them to work with, or?
No, we can overrule it, it just has to be a supermajority.
You can't, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
I,
There cannot be more than one single-family resident per lot. You can't have more than one building on a lot. So you'd have to combine the lots to build one building. I don't even know that this issue was raised and discussed with the Planning Commission. It's a straightforward request that's in the packet. The Planning Commission heard that request, has made this recommendation. It's up or down or do something different. But I'm nervous about getting into the particulars. There's no obligation on the individual's part to build anything. That's not the action council's taken tonight, and we're not making any promises on either side about building. That's a whole different process. You have to get a building permit, submit plans. I just recommend we stick strictly to what's shown on the screen. Either vote that up or make a different motion. If I understood right, if the suggestion is no limit on this, then just say that, make a motion, we'll vote on it. But I think we're getting too far into the details and the weeds here when neither side is making a commitment tonight about exactly what they're gonna build. And so those issues of how the lot's configured and all that I'm afraid that could be misleading to anybody.
And I understand that. The important thing that I think when reading this ordinance is that I don't believe the extra traffic is a reason not to grant that ability to the other lot. That's my point that I'm making.
Again, that's not, just to be clear, that the recommendation is to grant the permit, to grant the permit to use both lots.
question?
Yes.
She needs her special use permit. That's first and foremost, and that's what's here, right? That's what makes her daycare. So got that. I'm on that. Now, if we, as a council, say, okay, we have the special use permit, and here's 5 years again. And then she says, the owner says, but now I want to put the two together and I want to have one larger building. Then at that point, does it get rezoned? Because it's two lots and she needs to go back to planning and zoning just to combine the two so she can have the larger building? That's just a question on my part.
I think if you stipulate in your vote tonight that it's approved for whatever she wants to build on those two lots, then I think that'd be sufficient.
Fair enough.
But that, again, it's no promise about what's gonna get built or when it gets built or how it gets built. And it doesn't negate all the other typical requirements for platting and zoning well, for zoning it will, but platting or construction. This is all about the use of the property. This is a zoning matter. And given the circumstances, maybe council just wants to stipulate that would be part of the special use permit, the option to go to one building on both. But just want to make sure it's clear to the applicant, that doesn't mean that that's all the approvals they need. There's a whole.
No, she still has to follow code.
All right, well, I said, I know you understand that. I want to make sure everybody understands it.
Whoever makes this motion needs to make sure that they know what they're asking for.
I'm writing it.
Yeah, so I think that I wouldn't necessarily be willing to give carte blanche and say she could build whatever she wants. I think that under the circumstance that we have here, I see that there's a potential disparity between one building being 3,000 and the other one being half that size. we could say, you know, to a maximum of 3,000 feet on both sides, then that would be more agreeable at this point, although two buildings wouldn't be ideal for you. But I think that there again, like Ms. Brasher said, you know, that would be something that you could come back at a later date and try to combine the two lots into one. So I think she's writing a motion here.
Yeah, and I guess I would just say too, in that regard, if, let's just say theoretically, you bulldoze both houses and combine it into one lot, well, there's still limitations, there's setbacks, there's parking requirements. It doesn't mean they'd be able to build whatever they want. It would still be limited by other rules.
Council, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, to grant the special use permit to Ms. Mabry with the stipulation to not include limitations on the two lot.
As recommended by the Planning Commission.
I second the
Okay,
motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, would you read that again, please?
Make a motion to pass the special use permit for Ms. Mabry with stipulation to not include limitations on the lot limits, right? As stipulated in here, that they had stipulated.
Okay, does your motion cover both 1512 and 1520?
Yes, that's what the
Okay.
To not include
application.
limitations.
Okay.
It's the application as submitted without limitations, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, sir.
And that's what they requested.
Did I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, so a motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Callahan. The vote starts with Brasher.
Frazier, yes?
Ramirez, yes?
Vega, yes.
Gibson, yes. Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Motion passes as read unanimously,
Well, not as read.
as noted. Well, as you read it.
Yeah, yeah, there.
Okay. We're going to go back in our, onto our agenda. And we're going to move back to City Manager's Report. And item number 2, presentation of the proposed 2021 City of Elgin 5-year capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, as the mayor noted and has been discussed previously with our budget adoption calendar this year, is every year as an update of our 5-year capital improvement plan. Council's all been provided a hard copy of this plan, and after the presentation this evening, copies will be available to the general public and will be posted on the city's website. As the council's aware, we've been doing these 5-year plans now for about 5 years, and it's a strategic plan that discusses our capital needs throughout the city and an attempt to identify those needs moving forward and to provide a strategic plan for the future and hopefully a financing plan in some areas to how we can move forward. Obviously, capital improvements for the city of Elgin, like any city, is mainly investments in fixed assets like parks, streets, utilities, mostly, but there are other projects. Most of the plan includes also anticipated building, construction, or renovations. I think one thing it's important to note that the 5-year capital plan is not an appropriation. It's not an authorization to spend any money. It's simply a plan that helps guide our planning process for both capital needs and finances, but also provides a guide for the city budget process each year as we enter that as well. This is an example of a page that's in the 5-year report. You'll see there's a projection of the cost, a brief explanation of the project, and we tried to provide a visual on each project so the council can and the public can get an idea of where and what project we're talking about. At the bottom of each page shows the project budget. That means the anticipated cost for that particular project. And in some cases, it transverses a number of years as we go through the project. But then at the bottom, the two categories at the bottom are where the financing will come from each project as listed. And as you'll see in many of the projects, we obviously don't have the funding necessary to do these projects moving forward. But this year's plan is broken out into 5 basic categories. I think it's important to show folks that not only the projects that we anticipate doing in the future, where our needs are and help us to prioritize those needs, but to also understand the investment we've made in the last 5 years, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then we have proposed funding to be included in next year's budget that we'll be presenting in August. In this year's plan, as the mayor was referring to earlier, we have particularly exciting projects as it relates to a $10 million grant we were recently awarded from the Texas General Land Office. And then we also have a specific listing of the projects included in the 2021 COs that council approved at our last meeting. And then finally, the category, which is obviously the largest one, and that's unfunded projects looking out to the future. The first section is a demonstration of many projects we've done over the last 5 years, and we've actually invested almost $21 million directly back into fixed assets owned by the city. One of the best things to point to about that investment of $21 million is a third of that came from external sources, from grants, from partnerships, from private developers. So the city actually received $21 million in various capital improvements throughout the city. And we only spent $14 million of city funds, taxpayer dollars, on those projects. The next category is those projects proposed for funding that we'll be including in the budget next year. Obviously, we don't have a lot of extra money to invest now in capital improvements next year, given the changes that were made in our proposed certificates of obligation. I want to talk a little more in detail about this project that the mayor mentioned earlier. 2 pages in the report that discusses the General Land Office Roadway Flooding Prevention Project. This is an exciting and important achievement for the city of Elgin, probably the biggest grant award the city has ever received of over $10 million for flood mitigation. This is actually Hurricane Harvey funds that are just now being at least designated for distribution, and we received this notice, as the mayor said, a couple weeks ago. Just to elaborate on what the mayor mentioned earlier too, is it's important to understand that for us in Elgin, the projects that we know or see these projects as being County Line Road Phase 2 and Kennedy Street. But for purposes of the GLO and our grant application, it's one big project. And you'll see that's why it's depicted here on this map, where we have actually the one area that'll be addressed is, the 2 areas that'll be addressed are Kennedy Street and County Line Road. But at some level, all of those areas as it relates to stormwater and flooding control work together into one system. So as far as the GLO is concerned, and as far as this $10 million is concerned, we're receiving that money to do one flood mitigation project, but they're tied into one area. So it's just a matter of the staff recognizing we had these needs in both areas, and we were able to combine that into one grant application, and we're successful in getting funding. So this is also why it's reflected in the 5-year capital plan. as not having a specific budget at this point because these are one big project. But I think it's important to recognize that, again, as the mayor said earlier, while the GLO will consider this a flood mitigation project, they're essentially providing the funding for us to build the Phase 2 County Line Road reconstruction project that we've planned on for years. Their primary goal is to achieve the stormwater drainage and flood control in that area, but of course, one of our biggest goals is to make sure we get a new roadway out of it. So it's really a big plus for the city that the very project that we've been hoping to do out there at Phase 2, the Phase 2 project, is we're actually getting funding for that entire project. I would say that as I said, we've talked about earlier, the projects in the plan, we don't file grant applications based on specific projects or areas of town. We file grant applications that fit the criteria for receiving funding, and that's what we were successful in doing here. We filed an application that fit the criteria for the grant, so it wasn't necessarily to say these were our top projects, as much as we knew these were the projects that would fit the grant application. But it's important to understand, as the mayor said, in both cases, there are no plans, there are no engineering, there's not even on the Kennedy Street side. The truth is, we thought that part was such a long shot, we've not invested, we don't even have a concept plan for that as much as we do for the County Line Road reconstruction. So it's important to understand that there's a significant amount of work to be done on engineering, development of engineering plans and specifications on both projects. And in both cases, frankly, there's a significant element relative to land acquisition, right-of-way acquisition to build the projects that we anticipate building. This is another benefit that we had set up, that we have set up for our Phase 1 project, in that all the developers that were contributing financially to that project were not only contributing financial dollars, but have already agreed to dedicate the necessary right-of-way at no cost to the city. That won't be the case for Phase 2 or Kennedy Street. So in both cases, we anticipate the planning and development when the funds will start to come to be a significant time frame yet. So probably we'll be fortunate if we can put that project out to bid in 2 years. But I have to say too, this was part of our planning for this project, that we were optimistic that we would have gotten this grant application if we were able to move forward with the 21 COs as originally proposed and supported by the city council. We could have started construction immediately on Phase 1, could have had that project completed in the 2-year period that we would be doing the plans, and right-of-way acquisition for Phase 2 could have immediately started on that. Now we're probably in a situation where both projects, neither project will be able to start inside of 2 years. And we'll likely have both ends. If we do that, then we'll have both ends of County Line Road under construction at the same time, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid. We could have had this project, both ends of County Line Road, completely improved, maybe inside of 4 years. Now I think clearly it's going to take 5 or 6 years to get that done. Creates a lot of complications for us and not being able to move forward as we planned at this time. But it's still really good news. It's still really good news for the residents along Kennedy Street that will see an improvement there that frankly we thought I didn't know if that would ever be able to happen, so we're fortunate enough to get this grant. I'll just go on and just say, also in the 5-year capital plan, there's a separate section in there that delineates the 2021 CO projects. The council just approved at our last meeting at just over $28 million, as we've talked about numerous times. The city had saved money from prior debt issues and also has secured a grant of $5 million and a developer contributions of over $2.5 million. So out of the $14 million that council approved for debt issuance at our last meeting, the city's actually going to receive over $28 million in improvements. But the big number, of course, is our unfunded capital needs. We have over $55 million in this plan of projects that you'll be able to go through and see. And I think in the vast majority of cases, there won't be much disagreement about our desire to do these projects and the fact that nearly all these projects that are in the plan will be done eventually by the city, but it's just a matter of when we'll have the money and what the timing is for that. So out of that $55 million, we've included obviously the $8.5 million that was taken out of the 21 CO issue at the last minute. And then our calendar for, according to our budget adoption calendar, is the presentation tonight. We're going to talk here in a minute about our meeting schedule, because previously we had next Tuesday scheduled as a work session to go over the plan. Of course, that was tentative based on council's viewpoint. And then in 2 weeks at our let's just say June 15th. The 2 weeks at our June meeting would be the public hearing. And then we'd plan on setting it for formal adoption by resolution on July 7th. That then would, of course, we need to get the 5-year plan adopted by that time so we can incorporate any input that council has in the budget, the annual budget that'll be presented the 1st of August. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. We can circle back to the County Line Road part if you had any more questions you wanted to talk about that, Mr. Ives.
Excuse me, Tom,
Yes, sir.
on your dates, should that be June 15th?
Yes.
And June the 8th is, that's going to be the work session?
We had that on the schedule for the work session, but we were going to, this was in the budget adoption calendar, but we've been asked to go to another meeting that we're going to talk about here in a minute that's going to conflict with that. So maybe we can talk about that on the next item when we're going to do our work session if we want one. Now, I will say this, typically in the past, I don't know for the council members that have been around, again, since this is not appropriations, I don't think we've had a need for a work session in the past. Council members got their questions answered individually, but we can certainly do that at any time. Did you want to talk about about County Line Road or anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was even looking in the new 5-year capital plan, and, you know, in the old and the new, it's listed as phase 1 on the top, and then like in the writing, it's phase 3, and, you know, just had some questions like how the projects, because it's still listed as just a center turn lane, and then all of a sudden with the grant, it went to a 4-lane road, you know, with.
No, that's not correct. It's
Okay.
always been a 4-lane road. It has a center turn lane, but it's 4 traffic lanes.
Okay,
It was always, we have always discussed it being modeled after Lee Gildy Boulevard.
Okay.
Same kind of road.
and so, the engineering that was, you know, done, you know, the 691,000, was that for all 3
There's no engineering's been done on it.
on County Line?
Phase 1, we started the engineering on that.
Okay,
yes.
so the 691,000 is just for phase 1 engineering?
I think that's the total contract amount. I guess I'm not sure.
Okay, because that's what, you know, council passed
Well, that-
November
that
of
would-
last year.
That's what we'd be doing then, yes.
Okay, but it didn't do engineering for all the phases?
no.
Okay,
It's about that same amount the engineering be, the original estimate, well, I think it's reflected in there is a little less than $1 million for each phase.
Okay, and that's why I was just wondering, like, if that's for phase one, like just looking at, the 5-year capital plan, I noticed, the amounts, obviously for inflation and other things has changed, but if we've already paid for the engineering.
Thomas, what page are you looking at?
I'm looking, in the old one, page 23, and then, the new one, page 61.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
Okay, because we already paid the 691,000, I'm just wondering why in the capital plan, it's saying 750,000, like why, if we've already paid it and already.
We did, I don't know that we already paid the 691,000. That project, the engineering for phase one is ongoing as we speak.
Okay,
Council approved a contract for that, I guess last fall. Is
okay,
that what
so
you
that money hasn't been,
Some of it has.
said? Some of it
okay.
has.
And,
But that's only for phase one.
okay, and that's where I'm just wondering, like, where's that money coming from? The 691,000?
It's coming from the developer contributions that we've gotten so far.
Okay. But if we've already got a contract, should the numbers be changing from 600? That's kind of my
Again,
question.
this is a budget document. It's not
Okay.
a financial document.
Okay.
It doesn't say specifically what's being spent to the penny. I'm sorry, okay. So it's a budget document, so these projects are estimated what the budget cost would be.
Okay. And, I'm just wondering, with the developer funds, can they be, spent, on different things, or, I don't know if we talk about this now, or, I've got an agenda item for like, safety improvements. I'm just kind of wondering like what those developer funds can be used for.
To build the road that we have in this project.
Right, but,
So you're asking, can those funds be used to fund your project, or the project that you're bringing up?
well, that's part of, the project. What I'm just wondering is, we've held public hearings on some of the other roads, around town. Maybe I missed them, but, have we held public hearings on County Line Road and what the plans and?
We've had a public hearing every year about the 5-year plan. We've had a public hearing about the budget.
Right,
We've
no,
had
but about.
a public
you know,
hearing about the
des-
grant application.
But the, designs, where it's actually gonna go, how close it's gonna be to, the neighbors' homes.
We don't know that because we don't have the engineering done yet.
Okay,
But
because,
he's talking about the safety signs. Is that what you're talking about?
right, well, I'm talking about all of it, because, I've seen, some of the engineering, I had a
Right.
meeting in
Those
your
are-
office.
Those are schematic plans. They're not engineered drawings.
Okay, so that wasn't some of this 609,
That's what we're doing right now. But we're considering stopping that
okay,
because we don't have the funds to build the road now.
right. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like where, the money to come up with, those plans.
From the developer contributions.
Okay. And,
The developers of every one of those projects out there, as we've discussed numerous times in the meetings, have development agreements where they make payments at each time they file a final plat. So we received a portion of those funds. We're utilizing those funds now to pay for this engineering. That was, again, the whole plan with the 2021 COs, that we had enough money to pay for the engineering, that the engineering would be completed by first quarter of '22. then we could, if we had the $3 million that we were borrowing from 2021, then we could have immediately moved forward with bidding that project and starting construction on 2021. It's similar to what we talked about before. We don't pay an entire bill when we get the engagement. We also don't necessarily have all the money in the bank when we start a project.
Okay.
Thomas, would it be better, because I don't know that we're actually answering anything, would it be
Right.
better to have a one-on-one at a later time? And maybe get your questions answered, because I need to get your questions answered.
Yeah, because I was
Well,
gonna
I
say.
think I've answered.
The main question, I keep on asking is, what can these, developer funds be used for? Is kind of the main.
To build the road.
Right, but what road are we talking about? Because, like I said, there hasn't been, like public hearings as far as how close the road is gonna be to people's homes.
We don't know what that is yet. We don't
Okay.
have the engineered drawings
Okay,
yet.
let's follow this up one-on-one.
Okay,
Okay. So,
Well, those shouldn't be questions in anyone's mind yet. When you do, when we do a roadway project, we have schematics that we've shown you, that we've met with you personally and went over. We have an initial concept drawing, but where exactly the road and the right-of-way will exist on the ground is not done until we have detailed plans and specifications that are produced by the engineer. Nobody knows that until we get that done. We don't know in this case how much right-of-way we're gonna need from people. That's what we're trying to find out right now. That's exactly what the engineer is doing. We use the money that the developer contributions made to pay for that contract of the engineer, but that's all that money will afford right now.
because, some of my constituents have asked for different things in that road, it would obviously be up to council, if
Those plans are, the details we have are right here, that we have to this point. We've shown repeatedly schematic and concept drawings at the council meetings. They're welcome to any of that information. When
Okay.
it comes
All right.
down to the time when we
Thomas,
need to know
let's
exactly
continue
where the
this
property
at a
line
later point in
is,
time.
we'll contact those people, and those people will be engaged. We're trying to do that right now with some people out there, but we don't know where this project is going now, because
Tom.
we don't have money for it.
Tom, we're gonna continue it later.
Well, I don't think it's fair to ask like
I
like there's questions lingering about this. It's a very simple, straightforward
It's
project.
gonna be continued
Anybody
later,
can
okay?
find out anything about it.
Okay. Council, let's keep in mind that then this 5-year plan you just got, so don't be overwhelmed by it, because we have time to look at it, we have time to see, I like this project, I don't like this project, and then we're gonna have time to actually work on it and figure out what we're gonna keep in here and what we may decide not to keep in here. Most of these projects in here have already been vetted, but that doesn't mean that every project will always stay in here. So don't be overwhelmed by just getting this thing today, is the point that I want to make on that.
Mayor,
Yes,
if there's a suggestion that you have to put something else in there, that's always welcome too.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mayor, I wanted to also add that in the past, we've also had successful work sessions where questions like Thomas's have been discussed, and definitely encourage you guys to study the plan. That way you come with specific questions and we talk out various scenarios in the work sessions. And we can have as many of those as possible, so those are things to keep in mind.
Very good point.
If I could add one thing, Mayor, I would say probably the biggest thing the staff looks for from council is to go through the list of unfunded projects and prioritize them. We haven't done a lot of that in the past, but I think this issue about what are we trying to get grant funds for and all that, it becomes clear, the direction becomes clearer to the staff if we know that council, what their number one project, what the number two project,
And
like that.
that's a very, very good point. We have to say to the staff, out of the projects that we see, this is what we want, and this is what we want, and this is what we want, started this year, and this can hold off for another year, et cetera, so they can prioritize, because budget time It's gonna be when we say, well, we're not gonna be able to afford to do this, if that was what we had said previously. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just keep going if real quick. Just on our general activity update, we wanted to mention that, as I said earlier, we have on our schedule, our budget adoption schedule planned for a work section next Tuesday night, but we've since been asked by the EISD superintendent to meet in a joint work session with the school board next Tuesday evening. At 6 o'clock, I believe. It's not really anything, it's mainly for a presentation from the EISD staff and board on their demographic analysis, and it'll give, I think, council perspective that the same, while they're dramatically different issues in as far as funding and the response, the truth is they're in a big picture standpoint, the school district is dealing with the same exact issue the city is, that existing growth and anticipated growth in the future. So I'll send you a little more information about that tomorrow, but the mayor and I were planning on rescheduling the budget work, the 5-year capital plan work session, and attending this joint meeting with the school board next Tuesday evening. So, which brings us to the point about work session, as the mayor said. I think I would suggest that, as Councilman Vega said, that you go through the 5-year plan, and we'll reach out at the end of the week or the first of next week and see if there's a desire to have a full-blown work session just about the 5-year plan, or if we can deal with that a different way. But any ideas you have, you can let us know.
So that means for homework, we're gonna look at this thing, highlight what we feel is important, and, okay.
And then, as I think we discussed earlier, that we had a desire to have a city council planning retreat that we kind of got, obviously COVID and the way the election schedule was impacted, changed that up in that last, typically you have this planning retreat right after a new council comes in. But knowing that after the election in November, we were going to have seats up and a new council be seated in May, the mayor and I agreed to delay the planning retreat until we had the whole new council in place. So we'll be trying to get that scheduled. I don't know if you're familiar with the planning retreat. It's basically an opportunity to have for council to have a general discussion about any topic they want. And so, and I think that's what's important about an effective planning retreat, is that the council sets the agenda items and not the staff. So, so we'll be, if we can't, with these other meetings, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this in June yet or not, or July, but we definitely want to do it before the budget presentation in August. So, so we'll be reaching out to you. You might think about, typically, I think, Mayor, we talked about trying to do that on a Saturday morning or late morning around lunchtime. So we'll be reaching out to you about getting that scheduled as well. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we had a couple questions. I just want to make sure no one had any follow-up questions. We're implementing all the neighborhood traffic and safety projects that the council have been talking about for a while. We're still, we've made the changes on Avenue A, and we put up our new stop signs. What's the street?
Houston,
Yeah,
Madison.
Houston, Madison, I'm sorry. So we got those done. We've got the barricades on order for at our mirrors, and the sign, all the new signage is on order as well, so we'll get that up. We've also had, continue to have conversation with TxDOT about potential changes to what we call the Y down here at the extension of Main Street. We had inquiries about that, about safety, and I think if council recalls, TxDOT's already told us that that intersection does not meet the warrants. We're not close, frankly, to meeting the warrants for a traffic signal at that location. but we are talking about some changes in that intersection that I think will improve things, but hopefully we'll have something in that regard to share with council in the very near future, that because whatever TxDOT's already committed to, whatever improvements get made there, they want to make sure that they're on the same page with the city council about that. So with that, unless there's any questions about that or questions about anything else, Mayor, that's my report.
Anybody have any questions for Tom, comments? Okay,
And if I could, I just want to add, we talked about this a little bit last time, but this agenda item is on every meeting. And it's not intended to provide detailed reports on any item, but it's an opportunity for council members to just ask, I saw him digging a hole by my house, can you tell me what you're doing? If you have brief questions like that we can talk about them under this agenda item. But so that's why sometimes I've got something to report and other times I don't. So, but for you need to view it as an opportunity to any little thing you just want to ask about, this would be the place to do it.
okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on. Next is the consent agenda. All of the items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion, 1 second, and 1 vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member removes an item from the consent agenda and places it on the new business section for discussion and action. The only 2 items listed on the consent agenda are city council meetings, the city council special meeting on May the 17th and the city council regular meeting on May the 18th of 2021. Do we have any comments or questions on the consent agenda? If
Mayor, I'd
not,
like to make a motion to approve them with 2 corrections that I gave to Amelia before the meeting.
okay. Were they corrections, just minor corrections?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion has been made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Dennis to approve the consent agenda with the 2 minor changes that Mayor Pro Tem Brasher made. Mayor Pro Tem Brasher will go for the vote. Start.
Frazier, yes?
Ramirez, yes?
Vega, yes.
Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to new business, council. New business, item number 1, election of the Mayor Pro Tem by the City Council. And let's see here. Okay, background here. The election of the Mayor Pro Tem is a routine event occurring after every regular City Council election. As it relates to this election appointment, the city charter stipulates that the Mayor Pro Tem shall be a council member elected by the council at the first regular council meeting following each regular city election. And that's this meeting here. And that the Mayor Pro Tem shall act as mayor during the absence or disability of the mayor and shall have power to perform every act the mayor could perform if present. So before we hear any motions, do we have any questions as to what the Mayor Pro Tem does?
Mayor, I'd like to make a request, though, that for the nominations, that if they can state whether they're interested as well as why they want to be Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely.
Typically, we just go through the motions, but I think speaking on behalf of the nomination, I think is important these days.
Okay. So with that, given that, do we have any council members? Mayor Pro Tem Brasher was elected 6 months ago in the November election. So just so everyone understands, it hasn't been a year, it's been 6 months. So do we have any council members interested in the Mayor Pro Tem position?
I'd like to nominate Thomas Ibis.
Before we do the nominations, let me find out who all is interested, and then we'll accept nominations. Do we have any council members that are interested in nomination, in being Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry?
I'm still interested.
Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem Brasher is still interested. Councilmember Ibis,
Yeah, I'm interested.
you're interested in this? Okay. You want to explain why, or tell us why?
I would love to, help out
Okay.
in your absence.
Okay,
Learn more about the workings of the city and
okay,
work with the other council members.
okay. Sue?
Same. I have some experience, and I've filled in with some meetings where you haven't been available. I like talking to people.
Okay. Okay, do we have any other interest? Okay, with that going, that we have two council members that are interested in the Mayor Pro Tem, I'll accept a nomination for one.
I officially nominate Thomas Ibis for Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, there's a nomination. Is there a second? Okay, there's no second. Do I hear any other nominations?
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Sue Brasher.
Okay, the nomination is for Sue Brasher. Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Second that from, the nomination has been made by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Councilmember Maldonado for Sue Brasher as Mayor Pro Tem. We'll start the vote. Councilmember Dennis, you'll start.
Dennis, yes.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes?
Vega, yes.
Gibson, yes.
Albiarga, yes.
Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, no.
Ibis, yes.
Motion passes, 1 nay. Congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem Brasher.
There's no pay increase with that, right?
Okay, moving on, we've already done items number 2 and number 3 under new business. Let's move to item number 4, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Elgin, Texas, to approve a service agreement with Bastrop County to provide dispatching services to the Elgin Police Department, and to authorize the mayor to execute said agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is, just as stated, an approval of what we hope to be as a short-term temporary contract with Bastrop County to provide dispatching services. This issue relates to primarily a staffing issue we have right now. We only have 3 full-time dispatchers on the job at the present time, and obviously it's extremely difficult. It's a great effort by the staff, and then we have other patrol officers filling in, but have been able to keep up with that service. And typically, we have an agreement with Bastrop County where it's a mutual aid type concept where they fill in at times for us when there's an emergency, and we do the same. But we've reached a point where, frankly, we're asking them to help out for full shifts, and that goes way beyond what's reasonable for mutual aid. So, as you notice, this agreement is just to cover us between now and October. Hopefully, we'll be able to get staffed up and won't have to call on them as much. The cost associated with the agreement will obviously be offset by salary savings because we're not paying as many dispatchers are in the budget. So we don't think there'll be any negative impact on the budget, but it's simply a matter of making sure we have proper emergency communication services, and hopefully we'll be able to report back sometime this summer with a better situation. But Bastrop County has been a big help to us, and but we're just kind of relying on them too much, I think, at the present time, and they're supportive of having this agreement. And the chief's here. I don't know if you have anything to add, Chris. I pretty much covered it.
So the one question I would have is the dispatchers that are currently here. I know that we're short-staffed. The dispatchers that are currently here will continue to work in Elgin, or they will, until the end of the fiscal year, go to Bastrop?
They will continue to work here.
This is just a contract to fill in.
Okay, so we're covering basically shifts that,
That's right.
yeah, we're covering shifts that need to be covered, basically.
Right.
Council, do you have any questions or comments? I had the opportunity to visit the Bastrop County 911 Center, and I have to say that I was so impressed and we have to, I guess I have to stop thinking of Elgin, or Bastrop County as, not Travis or not Williamson, because Bastrop County is certainly growing, but it is an impressive operation. Back in the old days, dispatcher, they knew everyone and they knew where all the houses were, but with the sophisticated 911 and GPS and everything, any dispatcher in Bastrop County can lead an officer to the correct location. So I was very impressed by their operation. Council, do we have any more questions or comments? We know that this is a temporary, at least right now, this is a temporary contract that we're signing with Bastrop County?
That's right.
I got a question for Chief.
Yes, Carla.
Um,
Yes,
Are we
Councilman
doing,
Maldonado.
exit interviews and figuring out why these staff are leaving?
Mayor, Pro Tem, Council. The last two that we've had, one, no. Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. The staffing, the last two that we've had, back up the positions that we've had advertised, we have not had either qualified or fit applicants for those positions. The last two that we've had were the vacancies that we have now. They were not suitable and they were not retained through they were let go during their probationary period.
Can you define suitable for me?
They became too frustrated. They couldn't handle the stress of the call load, and we had callers hanging up on them, and we cannot have that.
Understood. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief while he's there?
Thanks, Chief. I'd just say one thing for the record, Skylar, that we do exit interviews with every employee that leaves, or everyone that's willing to do one with us, so.
My comment?
Yes.
I'm upset. I used to work there. We've got some people who do fire department and things, and I know you said we're Bastrop County and it's impressive, but we still have a lot of people here who pick up a phone and say, I live by Sue, or I live by, not from a cell phone, not from or turn at the gray dog. And I worry about those people. I've been there. I had that job. I understand we're short, and I'm okay with it as long as it's temporary, because I'd certainly still like to make sure that we can still, I don't want to make any necessary gaps to get our police officers or our ambulance or however it is. Because I already have a hard enough time with the ambulance in the city contract. I mean the county contract with the city, because we'll have that discussion there too. But I just get real upset because I just don't want to have any of our citizens sacrificed.
And none of us do, but I understand your point there, Mayor Pro Tem Brasher. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass item number 4 as read.
Also move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is made by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Councilmember Arriaga to approve item number 4 as read. Vote starts with Councilmember Dennis.
Dennis, yes?
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Biggie, yes.
Gibson, yes.
Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, item number 5 under new business, a resolution of the City of Elgin, Texas, authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Bastrop County to support the 911 Geographic Information System database management and making certain findings related thereto. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is, again, as stated, formal approval of an agreement with Bastrop County, but as a practical sense, what it means is that we'll we agree to share with them all of our GIS information now that we're gathering, just to help them have as up-to-date records as possible as far as property lines, right-of-ways, all of that information. They also are the source for that data from Capcog in Austin, so it's just a way for us to share detailed information. Frankly, we share most of that information already, but this is just a formality to agree to the terms and conditions for where we would do that. No cost impacts for the city.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? And as you said, this is a no-cost agreement.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to pass item number 5 as read.
So moved.
Second? Did you second it, Councilmember Vega? So the motion has been made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Vega, pass item number 5 as read. The vote starts with Mayor Pro Tem Brasher.
Frazier, yes?
Ramirez, yes.
Vega, yes.
Gibson, yes. Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's go to item number 6. Excuse me. Let's go to item number 6, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Elgin, Texas, authorizing a master signage plan for Walmart located at 1320 West US Highway 290, Frontier Crossing Subdivision, Lot 1, acres 17.9877.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually a procedural kind of cleanup item. As I think anybody knows, been out to Walmart lately, they've made a bunch of exterior changes and signage changes, and actually probably should have done a master signage plan when the property was first built and when they filed for the permit. I think the part of the new signage is the electronic board that's on their gas pumps that tells you what price the gas is now. So it was actually that new sign that generated this conversation. So they've submitted all the formal requirements. That information's included in your packet. But essentially, this is approving a plan that's pretty much already in place. There's nothing unusual about it. This has been reviewed by the Plan Commission and staff, and we recommend approval is submitted.
Tom, what department does this go to, the signage?
Development services.
Development services.
Planning. All sign permits are
Okay.
just like a building permit.
Okay. And that's something I learned today, because I didn't know. Okay, and I looked at all this, I'm going like, my God, Walmart's been here for years, but, all right. Do we have any questions or comments?
I do.
Yes.
Walmart's only been here since 2014. The agenda indicates that it's been here since the early 2000s. Will this allow them to put up more signage than they currently have?
No, I don't believe so. I didn't ask that exact question.
Where are you
you-
reading this?
It's in the agenda. It's the PDF attached. Councilmember cover sheet, master sign plan resolution, Exhibit A resolution. I read it last night, took a bunch of notes.
Well, you've seen in the plan then specific pictures of the signage, so I guess I haven't compared that signage with what's up there. I don't think there's anything new that's not already up, but I guess I can't answer that question definitively. I mean, tonight I can't answer it definitively.
Do you see that as being a problem, Councilmember
I'm not a
Callahan?
big fan of Walmart.
Say it again?
I'm not a big fan of Walmart.
No, do you see it being a problem in passing the motion as passed, as read?
If it enabled them to put up a lot more signs and their signs were taller or greater in visage than other businesses that we're hoping will come along 290, yes, I would see that as a problem.
And I don't know the signage regulations or rules, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
there's
but-
rules, and I don't believe out there that they can do any higher, according to code. And yes, there's codes for signs too.
Oh, of course there is.
Yes, so, I don't think that they can do any more than what they already have or any taller.
Okay.
Good question. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass item number 6 under new business as read.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So the motion has been made by Councilmember Vega, seconded by Councilmember Maldonado. We'll start the vote with Councilmember Vega.
Vega, yes.
Gibson, yes. Maldonado, yes.
Callahan, no.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes 1 nay. Item number 7, County Line Road Safety. And this item was presented by Councilmember Ibis, if you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've discussed this in, previous meeting. One of the main things we've discussed is, especially my ward, the northern end, where it approaches the northern end of the city limits. There's still no speed limit signs after the high school, going north of the high school on County Line Road. I know it all used to be a school zone, but that was numerous years ago. I think we definitely need at least speed limit signs on northbound County Line Road after the end of
Are we still
The
talking
school
about
zone.
inside the city limits?
inside the city limits. I've got pictures, I don't know if they can be projected, but it just says, end school zone, where the school zone ends, and there's no speed limit signs on northbound County Line Road after the high school. And I think that's a big problem. There's been crashes, into the neighborhood on County Line Road, right at the entrance to Eagles Landing, that we don't even have, a speed limit sign on northbound County Line Road. I think it's something that, needs to be addressed. The other thing, I just like a little clarity on is, I know we have, some of these developer funds and, we built the city got grant money to build sidewalks further south on County Line Road, going from, ACC up to the high school. But I'm hearing that possibly with the expansion of County Line Road, those might have to be ripped out. I think, even if there were grant money, I think that's a waste of a lot of money if we have to rip those out. That's why, previously I was asking, are there any public hearings or anything, on the design of County Line Road? Because, I'd like to know some of the different options, and some of my neighbors that I talk to as well would like to know some of the different options that we have with those funds and what kind of safety improvements can be made. I've lived in Elgin since 2005, and back then, they said, with all the safe routes to school, that we were eventually gonna get sidewalks going from my neighborhood, connecting, the high school, and, still there's no sidewalks. So, I'm just wondering if some of those funds can be used because I see high school students walking every day in the ditch, because there's no sidewalks going to the high school. And,
From where, Councilmember
from
Ibis?
Eagles Landing, there's no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks even connecting the high school to the new Homestead development, which is even south of Eagles Landing. The Homestead did put a little sidewalk in, but, that's why I'm just wondering if, some of those safety improvements can be made, and that's why I was, bringing that, amount up earlier, when I brought up, the issue of safety improvements, said flashing beacons, there was no money in the budget. Well, I'm just wondering, like how council passed, the 691,000, where that money came from, but we can't find, a couple $1,000s for flashing beacons, so children don't get potentially injured walking to school, especially, I'm just, kind of, at a loss as to what, can be done and, what funds can be used to improve County Line Road, and, if there can be some public hearings, because that's what I hear, from my neighbors, my constituents, is, I really don't know what's going on, with County Line Road. I just hear that, it might be expanded, but, they kind of want to have some input seeing their city residents.
Mayor, I can respond to a number of those things. I would say first that we've talked about that signage before. I told you we would put them up, right?
Yes.
And they're on order, so that doesn't require council action.
Okay.
We've already put up signs at your request, correct?
Yes,
Your
there
specific
are some
request.
additional signs, thank you.
One thing I want to make clear is that, that every council member and certainly both mayors that I've worked for in Elgin are concerned about safety on County Line Road. The staff's concerned about safety and the kids walking in the street and not having sidewalks to walk on. That's exactly why we put together the plan we did 5 years ago. It's exactly why those projects include sidewalks and address those issues. We've briefed you, we've answered every question you've posed to us, correct? We've met with you privately, we showed you the schematic, we've met with you twice. You have more information about County Line Road than any other member of council. We've given you more, there is no more information about it. That is the project. So the reason why we developed that plan, the reason why we tried to move forward with that funding in the CO is because we all have those same concerns. The plan that we have, all 3 phases, will address every issue that you've raised about County Line Road or anyone else. Let me say that again. The plan we had earmarked to start on the first quarter would address every issue about drainage, about safety, about pedestrian access, about signage. Everything would be addressed in that program. Everything would be addressed if we just move forward the project as delineated here. Now, what I will say is that you've brought up repeatedly about using the money contributed to by developers. I suppose the council can use that money, but what I would tell you is that temporary sidewalks, temporary signage that will have to be moved later, that's not what the developers contributed that money for. And I would also make the argument that every person who's bought a house out there, every person that'll buy a house in Eagles Landing, they've already paid their portion of the cost associated with this road. They've already paid for that road to be improved because I'm quite confident every developer has spread that cost over every lot, every home that's getting built out there. So the people that live out there now have already paid their share for this road, not for temporary sidewalks, not for signage, not for school zone flashing beacons. And any money the city uses now out of that fund, we'll just have to make up later. And I'm not for robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's what we spend most of our time here, it seems like, as a council, as a staff, is addressing issues that weren't done right the first time. So I suppose it's true that it's council's discretion, I suppose, to utilize some of those funds that have been turned over for different purposes. But I'd certainly recommend against it. And it's certainly not what the staff recommends, is trying to do something, a halfway measure, sidewalks that will have to be moved later, signage that will have to be moved later or not even be able to be used. So we've made our recommendation about this project. There's not a different plan. There's not a backup plan. It's a simple project. It's a flat, straight road. There's one way to address it. The road project that we have in this plan, that we've had in this plan for 5 years, is the road project that will be built. There's no question about it. That's what's going to be built. Now, when it gets built, I guess that's up to council or future councils to come up with the timing and the money. As we talked about earlier, we had a very specific plan that would have put us in a position to have most of this road built. And the very section that you were talking about, we were prepared to move forward immediately on, and it would have addressed every one of the issues that you've raised. So I don't have more information to give you. There's not more information to provide. The staff doesn't have a different idea. This is the project. This is the project we have to do for the future of the city. We're on track to build maybe 800 homes in Elgin this year. That represents a 30% increase in our housing stock and our population. Most of those homes are going to be built on y'all's end of County Line Road. That's a lot of traffic down there to be used, and it's a country road with it's not intended to have pedestrians on it. That's why we were trying to build sidewalks. That's why we're trying to improve the drainage. So I don't have more information to provide. We already talked about earlier, the money that we have so far is what's paying the engineering contract. Once we have the engineering plans and specifications done, then we'll be able to be very specific about exactly where the property lines are, exactly where the road is going to go, exactly where the sidewalk's going to go. But we don't have those plans done yet, and we don't have them we haven't even started on those plans for the phase 2 part. So we're prepared to do whatever the majority of council directs us to do, but there's not a magic solution for this. And personally, I think the only policy issue before City Council right now is where are we going to come up with the money, and when do we start building the project?
Well, that's what I'm just kind of looking for. I mean, we got, some of these Safe Route to School grants. There are some sidewalks along County Line Road. I'm just wondering, if there's some other options, just even on Ramirez Road, which TxDOT classifies as a driveway, council made some adjustments to that. I'm just wondering if we could have the same public input for County Line Road. And, I'm just looking, at, the schematics that, for the bid in November, and, it shows it going down to a 2-lane road at 1100 at both points. I'm just thinking, isn't that gonna be a bottleneck? That if we have.
Yes, because we don't have the $5 million to do that section of County Line Road.
Right, but
It has to marry up with the existing traffic.
right, but even the schematics have on both, where it hits 1100 in both spots, where that weird curve is, it has it going down to 2 lanes. So, I'm just wondering, all this traffic, and then all of a sudden you come down, to 2 lanes? I'm just wondering, why there, isn't any leeway with this, when, some of the other roads in town, we've had public hearings on, we've made some adjustments,
What do you mean by leeway?
That, as far as, the design, what's been, presented to council, in the past and is publicly, available, it shows, it going down, to 2 lanes, that we may have to, remove those sidewalks that we received, grant money for, with different, proposals, we might be able to save, those sidewalks, reappropriate, some of the funds for building this, rebuilding all those sidewalks, so,
We don't have any of that money, though. I don't.
But we just received a grant for the southern portion going towards 290. Council doesn't have, any leeway as far as how much is spent on that, or where that money is spent, or the design of the road, or council has no input on?
Not if we want to give back the $10 million. We had a specific project that we were approved for.
But I was gonna say, that's kind of where, I'm, frustrated just as, a resident of Elgin, is that, there hasn't been, that public input, where citizens such as myself and, other constituents can, give their input on what the city is planning on doing. That's.
The city council has a public meeting twice a month, you know that. Everybody can come and give input anytime. We've had specific public hearings about the 5-year plan, about these projects. The other part is, as I'm telling you, this is all the information we have. There's no other information. There are no other plans. There are no other specifications. We can't answer those detailed questions. We don't have the engineering plans. We've never had the money to spend on developing those engineering plans. We won't have those plans for 2 years.
Typically, in my previous experience, when I got a 6-foot wide railroad strip of sidewalk down my yard that I really didn't want at that point, as soon as they had the design, because that had to go through TxDOT, and some of this will have to too. Once you get those design documents, then we came down here, and I came and talked to my city council person and said, why do I have to have a runway strip in the middle of my yard? You know, everybody should be able to ask those questions. I think we'll all, I would say, everybody should, you know, be able to say. But I don't think we're quite to that point yet where, because if you just come in here with a group full of people and you just throw, but if you kind of have some plans and then you can come in there and look at them and say, well, maybe, but, right? Because that's what they did with me. They put this in front of me and I'm like, that's like a runway sidewalk in my front yard, you know? Because I had 2 wheelchairs that could pass and not touch in my little big front yard. And so I said, why? Well, they told me no, because it was TxDOT and I couldn't say anything and they wouldn't change for me. But I would think that we would get to that point where everybody could come. You know, and we'd have to make sure that everybody is saying, hey, make sure and come here, because then you don't want to turn around and say, oh yeah, I didn't know.
Right.
I wanna say this too, for you. That section of road out there, County Line Road that you're talking about, it's called Phase 3. And it's Phase 3 because I've been on the council now 2 years. Before that, 5 years on the Envision Elgin Council, right? And for all those years, we have talked about that crazy intersection out there by the high school. And it all is dependent on TxDOT approving whatever goes through there. And they're funding a good portion of that. And so we cannot take money out of this grant, because then we forfeit the right to that grant by reappropriating. We don't have the funds for Phase 1 because it got taken out of the CO. So now we're hamstrung with, okay, great, we have this section, but we're waiting on TxDOT for this, and we've got to wait to present this other. So yeah, it does go down to 2 lanes, but that's because we haven't heard back from TxDOT, and they haven't engaged in a plan. I think we're getting closer to it than what we were back 7 or 8 years ago when I started the conversation.
Yeah, because the whole idea behind the 3-phase approach, one, it's a lot of money.
Right.
Each one of those phases is a lot of money, right? No matter how much you try to slough off or anything. But at least when we had Phase 1 and Phase 2 pretty close to done, then we would say, now you have to do something with us, TxDOT, right? Because we're here. Now come with us. And that was the approach we took for that.
TxDOT already too has a schematic plan for that project, and our project will marry up with theirs. But you realize if they don't build 2, when we build 1 and 3, they'll both pinch down to 2 lanes. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but that's, the 4-lane road is what has to be built out there. It just has to be done. You're gonna have 3,000 or 4,000 more homes out there. Traffic is gonna demand it. And I promise you, when school starts this year, we're gonna hear about it. You're gonna hear about it. But I would say again, as we've always said, anybody that has any question that wants the information, all they have to do is call and come in, we'll brief them. And I'll say again, you've been provided more information about this than anybody else. You've literally been provided personally. We met with the city engineer, I set that up for you. We went through the whole plan. You have all the information that we have. There is no more information to share.
Right, and I appreciate that, but you were saying that, you know, if any changes need to be made, it needs to be done in the next 6 months or so, that, you know, or otherwise, you know, we're going forward.
What changes? No, we got plenty of time now, because we don't have
Right,
funding for Phase 1.
But that's what I'm, you know, keep on kind of going back to is, okay, if we have, the developer funds, we've got, schematic drawings, why couldn't we use some of those developer funds to put sidewalks to connect, the sidewalks from, Eagles Landing and the Homestead to the high school? You can, you already have the drawings for the road. If you build, the sidewalks to the side, or, like I was talking about, the flashing beacons, well, you could put them off, to the side so they wouldn't be in the, construction area, or, move them if they needed to be moved with the construction. I'm just wondering, if we had 691,000 that, for, the county line, in engineering, why can't, a few thousand be used for safety improvements? That's kind of my main.
Every penny is going to be used for safety improvements. That's what we're doing with this project. That's what it's about. That's what the money's for. I'm sorry if you thought I said we couldn't do that. The council can do that. I think it's a mistake. I think it's likely, and we explained this to you when the engineer was here, that we can't locate those signs, those sidewalks today and be sure we won't have to tear them out. We don't have the right of way. We don't have the specific engineering plans. And any of that money, again, would have to be refunded later. Again, to me, that anything temporary out there is just kicking the can down the road. And clearly that's plagued Elgin for years, of taking inexpensive measures and trying to do something halfway. That's all these road projects we've been working on lately. So I didn't say you couldn't do it. We'll, as again, to make clear, we'll do whatever the council votes to do. And I would believe that that money is our money and the council can spend it however they want, I guess. But you certainly face legal challenge if we get too crazy with how we spend that money.
Councilmember Callahan.
And clearly that's not what was intended for that money and not what the individuals living out there are paying for.
Councilmember?
I have a hypothetical question. How would we behave, how would we handle this if one of the children that lives in Eagles Landing got hit by a car tomorrow going to school? What would we do? Or would we do anything?
I think that question could be asked anywhere in the city. Try south of the city, try north of the city. Really, that's a question for the entire city, not exclusive to Ward 3.
Yeah, but we have
It's a horrible
5,000
situation that would happen, no doubt.
There's about 5,000 new homes going in
Yeah,
out there.
right.
And most of those homes are probably gonna have children.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
where all the schools are
Yeah,
located.
likewise, trust me, Thomas, I've had similar questions in the past. I wish things could get done overnight. Sidewalks alone, you could take a sidewalks 101 course and still, I think some of the pros with the city is that we've had a track record of securing grants. I think we should probably take advantage of the momentum now versus in the future to be able to get closer to what you envision out there, as well as continuing to talk to your constituents. There will be an opportunity for a public forum again, like we had a few weeks ago on the COs. We only had a few turnouts, so maybe you guys can help with the turnout this next time around, because to be very honest, I was a little disappointed. We want more engagement from folks, but we will have an opportunity with the 5-year capital plan. Nothing will be approved until the public has an opportunity to speak on some things. But I encourage you guys to think big picture as far as those hypothetical questions that we think about on a regular basis. I can think of a few situations in other areas of town as well. Try not to make this about ourselves, but it's a problem, and it's going to be a challenge, unfortunately, because that's the part of the city that's growing the fastest. But I think really the answers to the questions. I think you can understand what they're telling you, right, Thomas?
Right, yeah.
I'm just trying to make the difference between that and prolonging this conversation where I think we're gonna get to some sort of resolution. I just don't know if we're gonna do that tonight because we don't have all the answers, and I think you understand that part, right? Because I want to continue the conversation as well. I just want to be able to continue it once we know more as a council, and I believe we will be provided with the information. But if you want to go on, we can. I just don't know if we get anywhere tonight versus maybe in a couple of months.
Well, what I'm just wondering is, like, the simplest thing, just, kind of like simplest, for, Ramirez Road or, anything else. To me, the simplest thing would be, spend a couple $1,000s, for beacons along, county line roads. So, people actually know when the school zones are on the text doc.
We'll have to be sure that those are, I mean, again, it won't be about us, it will be about the constituents out there. And the way you kind of throw it away, or throw it out, like, oh, we'll just spend a couple $1,000s. Careful how you say that, because it will come back to haunt us in the future as far as transparency and not being very honest with the citizens. So those are your words, so be careful in how you say that, because that's not really what we mean. We
Right.
mean that we're going to allocate earmark funds specific to a certain equipment or certain situation out there, but we're not just throwing thousands of dollars out just to make a small part. Don't say it that way.
No, but-
And be very careful with that.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying is, there were millions.
I understand what
you know,
you're saying,
spent-
it's
you know,
just, I
spent
mean, do
on-
we have a,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, all right. So everybody here has made their point. I appreciate the fact that the council is so involved in this, because unfortunately, we've had many where nobody talks. So I appreciate this, guys. I don't know that we have, I don't know that we can take this any further right now. Do you agree, Councilmember Ibis, or no?
The only
Right
thing,
now.
I would just like to propose is, the city manager said that, at this meeting, he would have the bid back for the flashing beacons. I was just wondering what that came in at.
No, we didn't say that.
Okay.
We put that in writing to you. Both, the city engineer told you directly that would be the next meeting. He also told you that the estimate right now is $30,000, not a couple $1,000s for those flashing beacons. And we put that in writing to you.
And that'll be at the next council meeting?
That if he has the bids together, they will be, just as we directed him to do. He prepared the plans, he's bid the project out as the council asked, and he's gonna bring that back to council as soon as it's ready.
Thank you.
And that's actually less than what I thought, because I thought he had said 40, but, okay. Are we ready to move? Okay. Let's move on. There will be no executive session tonight. On the agenda next is announcements. Do we have any announcements, Council? City Manager?
I don't think so. We announced everything we had to say, I think.
Anybody else have any announcements? Council, I ask you, do you have any further business to discuss?
Well, wait a minute. I always have to ask Amy if there's
Oh,
any
I'm sorry, yes.
announcements. Is there any announcements, Amy?
Sidewalk sale Saturday.
This Saturday? Okay. That's it?
Do you have extra umbrellas? It seems to
Okay,
be-
so is that,
Too much going on to take the floor.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Check it out online.
do we have any further announcements? Council, I ask you, do you have any other further business to discuss? If not, I adjourn this meeting at 5 minutes after 9. Thank you, Council.